Okay, now we're recording. So I want to thank you guys for hopping on 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock for some of you. I know it's a tough time, so I say it every week, but I just want to say how much I appreciate you hopping on. So tonight we're going to talk about the color code. Just to give a little background on this, Jeff Kay, who is our Central Region corporate rep, comes in. He's based in Jeff Hill's office in Salt Lake City, and he comes in maybe every 6 months or so, and he meets with the Chicago area Star Diamonds or whatever. So I met with him last week, Wednesday, and something that they really encouraged us to do as coaches was to talk to our team about the color code. So this is a pretty new concept to me. It's something that I'm still learning about, so I'm by no means an expert. But I just found it absolutely fascinating, and actually, even within the last few days, have really been applying what I've learned through training myself. I've been watching videos and reading articles and stuff like that on the color code. And actually, I had my husband take it as well, and his results are really interesting. And we spent a lot of time talking about, how true it is. So, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. So, being that I'm a teacher, I made a PowerPoint. So let me just pull that up. 1 second. It's coming, I hope. My computer suddenly started getting really slow. Give me thumbs up if you can see this. All right, I see from Heidi. Okay, so the color code in Beachbody. So basically the background behind color code was it's a group of PhDs who came together and they came up with this personality test. So what does the color code have to do with Beachbody? So that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight. So the color code, I had a typo. The color code determines, not determine, why you do what you do, not what you do. So that's why when you took your test, you had to think about your life as a child, which I had a hard time with at first because I look back at me as a kid and me now, and I'm very different. But after learning more about the color code, it talks a lot about how your motives haven't changed since you were a kid. Your personality, your DNA, they really don't change. So it doesn't change depending on circumstances, and it's your motive behind all decisions. So the key point to take from this is the why you do things, not necessarily what you do. Meaning that, for example, I'm by nature not a very organized person, but I can become organized. So my why in me causes me not to be the most organized person, but because I know I need to be organized, that's a what that I can do. So it's not saying that you can't go against your color code. Jenny Garza is a perfect example. By nature, Jenny is somewhat shy, but she's learning to go beyond that shyness and, become outgoing and all of that. So I'm not saying that you can't change these things. All right, so I'm sure all of you guys took the color code test. Red is power, blue is intimacy, white is peace, and yellow is fun. What I found was really, really interesting was almost everybody on the team, with maybe like 5 or 6 exceptions, were all blues. And we'll get to that later because I believe that there's a reason behind that. Okay, so how do they interact? This actually could go on for a while, but there's a circle. So you'll notice in between the red and the blue, they're non-complementary opposites. The blue and the white are complementary. Yellow and blue are complementary opposites. Yellow and red are complementary similarities. And I'll kind of go into that, but I just wanted you to see kind of a picture of how all of them relate. So the first combination we're going to talk about, so instead of just focusing on what a red is like and what is a white is like, I'm going to focus on how you interact with a red and a white. So like for Jenny, she's a white. So this is a good thing for her to listen to when she's going to be talking to other reds. Marcy is a red, so this is a great conversation for Marcy to think about when Marcy and Jenny work together, let's say. So they're both logical people by nature. The reason that they complement each other is reds like to take charge, and generally whites like to be led. Now, when does this come into conflict? Well, it comes into conflict when a red takes too much charge over a white, because whites still like to have some say in things, okay? But you can see how they complement each other. You know, reds take charge, whites like to be led, so there's no question of authority, and they're both logical. If it makes sense, they'll do it, okay? So those are complementary colors. Yellow and blue, they called hand in glove. So ironically, I'm a combination of yellow and blue, so that was kind of funny. But the reason they call them hand in glove is because they're both emotional people. So they're more likely to protect someone's feelings. They'll go with their gut instinct, not necessarily with logic. But the reason that they're complementary is because blues like to take charge and yellows like to be led. So even though a red sounds like the leader, which is how I took it when I first heard it, blues are actually leaders too, but they lead with emotion. So like for me, I'm a blue. I can be a leader, but I'm a leader emotionally, like I want to make sure everybody's okay and they know what they're doing and things like that. So when you're talking about a yellow-blue relationship, they have an emotional connection. They're good problem solvers, highly creative. Their quality is awesome. They're like those people who they become employees at a company and they're very dependable. They, you know, you can count on them. If a meeting's at 7 o'clock, they're not going to miss it. If they do miss it, they're apologizing up a wazoo, you know, like they're very dependable. The problem with yellows and with blues is that emotions can get in the way. So I find that with myself a lot, I take things very personally. And so, you know, let's say one thing I had trouble with when I first became a coach as a blue and a yellow is when somebody didn't want to join my challenge group and they wouldn't join somebody else's challenge group. Instead of becoming logical and being like, well, maybe that coach is a better fit for them, I took it personally and thought, well, I'm doing something wrong. So that's an example of a blue emotion. All right, then you have red and yellow, and those are complementary opposites. So it's kind of like the opposites attract sort of scenario. Red is in control, yellow likes to be led. The problem comes in is that reds are logical. They're A, B, C. This is what we do, we follow it. Where yellows are much more creative and they're emotional and things like that. And sometimes reds can get kind of annoyed with that. So that's why they're complementary opposites. Blue and white. So this was kind of an interesting one. They called it gentle persuasion. The blue is in control. Like I said, blue has a lot of leadership capabilities, but they lead with emotion. And white's okay with that. The problem is blues are emotional. So when a blue is dealing with a white, and the white is speaking logic to them, sometimes they can take that personally. So they won't get in each other's way. They can both work well alone. If blue can control the emotion and white is willing to communicate, they're effective. However, if the blue is super emotional and the white won't tell them what's wrong, they have a hard time connecting. Does that make sense? And sometimes a blue will get frustrated with a white because a white doesn't tend to take initiative. So it appears, the example Jeff used is if you were at a party, the white would be okay sitting in the corner by themselves kind of watching. The blue would walk up to the white and make sure that the white is okay. The yellow would be the center of attention, and the red would be telling people what to do. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's kind of all the colors in a nutshell. All right. Next one. Yellow, white. Okay. So these are probably, when you're thinking of trying to get stuff done, I probably wouldn't put a yellow and a white together and tell them to run a challenge group after reading this. So the problem with yellow and white is that neither of them want to be in charge. There's no power struggle. One's logical, one's emotional, and so they don't really connect with each other, and they probably won't get much accomplished. So, in thinking of coaches or thinking of challengers, you probably, as you grow your team, you probably don't want to put a yellow and a white together because they'll not get anything done. And so at this meeting, it was really funny to us. What Jeff did was he had us go into what we thought were our colors. So he described the colors, and then he had us go into different corners of the room. And after reading the description of a blue, I was pretty sure I was a blue, even though I hadn't taken the test. And two girls there were pretty sure they were yellows, and Mary and Sarah and Tim and Diane, they all identified themselves as reds, which didn't surprise me at all. And we had no whites. And then he told us to go ahead and plan a Super Saturday. And we had like 10 minutes to do it. So the Reds sat down, they had a list, they were going to have Autumn Calabrese there, they were going to be the biggest and best ever. They knew exactly what they wanted, they knew what time it was going to start, they knew what time it was going to end, and they knew what everybody was going to do. The Yellows sat there, and when they were asked to share what their Super Saturday was going to be like, they looked at Jeff and said, "Oh, I didn't know you wanted us to make a list. We were just thinking we would just have a fun time and it would be great." They had written nothing, and they had really come up with no plan at all whatsoever. And then the Blues, it was really funny because me and another girl were kind of natural leaders, but I didn't want to step on her toes and start explaining our Super Saturday, and she didn't want to step on my toes and explain our Super Saturday. So we were both blues in that we didn't want to hurt each other's feelings, but we both kind of wanted to be in charge. And our whole Super Saturday was all about sharing transformations and making sure there was time to mingle and making sure everyone was comfortable and all of this stuff. So it was a funny activity that we did, and it was funny how we actually all followed our colors without even realizing it. All right, so this is the one I was cracking up about. So red, blue, they call it blood, sweat, and tears. And as Beachbody coaches, I look at many of the members of the tribe and many of the members of Fit Company, and we have a lot of reds and blues. And I was cracking up because Marcy is my challenge group partner. And she and I work very, very well together, but there are times when we do misunderstand each other. And my husband is also a red. And I see, like I was telling you at the beginning of the call, after we did this activity together, we both kind of sat down and we were like, that's so true about our marriage. I want him to understand me. I do sometimes want to be in control, and he's very logical. And he always is right in his mind. So, and my coach, Mary, is also a red. And I've seen, the conflict that we have where she'll say things that hurt my feelings, but she's speaking from a logical perspective. So what they said about red and blue is that this is the most dynamic team of all. They both want control. The red is logical, the blue is emotional. But if they can get over themselves, this pair is the most successful of all. Why? They both are quality. They both have vision. They both are dependable. They're both natural leaders. And so they get a lot done. The problem is that the blues are very hard on themselves. And reds don't like to admit that they made mistakes. So those are when the conflicts can arise. So I was cracking up at this one because it does describe a lot of my personal relationships. So All right, and then I did want to kind of throw this one out there since we did have so many blues, the blue-blue relationship. Which, can anybody take themselves off mute and answer my question, why do we have so many blues on our team? What makes you think, why do we have so many? Nobody? Well, who's the blue on the team?
I'm not blue.
What are you?
I'm red.
You're red?
Which makes sense because I'm very much want to be in control and I'm very bossy and demanding and all those kinds of things. But I think we have a lot of blues because I think in Beachbody, they want to be, if based on what you've just said, they want to be leaders, but they also lead with emotion, and people connect with emotion, especially when it comes to their weight and their health, because it's such an emotional thing for people, where I think blues have the best chance to connect with other people, where I have a very hard time getting people to connect with me, and I think they don't see me as an emotional person. So I see that a lot of blues do this because they're emotional and it becomes personal, but yet they can still lead other people.
That is all very true. I 100% agree with all of that. But I would say a lot of the reason why we have a lot of blues on this team is because I'm a blue and Jenna's a blue and a lot of you guys are blues. You tend to attract people like you. Now, granted, yes, Heidi, you're on the team. Yes, Marcy's on the team. Yes, Jenny's on the team. Yeah, we're going to have other people outside the colors. But I was kind of looking through the tribe. Now, who's the leader of the tribe? Mary. Look at Mary's coaches. Look at a lot of the leaders of the tribe. Sarah, red. Tim, red. Diane, red. Kathy Kaufman, red. Bridget Swartz, red. Like, you look across the board at all of the diamonds in the tribe, except for me and Jenna, were all red coaches. So I would argue that a lot of the reason why we have a lot of blues on the team is because you tend to attract people that are like you. But at the same time, there are other colors, obviously, because we're all not just like cookie cutter, only hang out with people that look and act like us. But so anyway, so since there were so many blues on the team, I did want to talk a little bit about the blue-blue relationship. So they're very quality orientated, very detailed, which I'm not, so I don't know where that came from. Very strongly committed. So when I tell you I'm going to have a meeting with you, I don't miss that meeting. I will be there. Sometimes can get caught up in details, very considerate and sensitive to each other. However, they're extremely hard on each other. The most judgmental color of all was blue, which I found to be kind of interesting because blues are so naturally caring, but they're the most judgmental of all because they have such high moral standards of expectations for themselves that they can't help but pass those expectations on to other people. So if you said something really mean to somebody else, blues have a really hard time not judging you and not forgiving you. Whereas a yellow could kind of see past that. So sometimes blues are too serious and they struggle with depression and anxiety and things like that. Hello, Queen of Anxiety here. So I thought that was interesting. All right, so all fine and dandy, but what does this have to do with Beachbody? So I came up with a chart after doing some research, and I tried to kind of apply it to challenge groups. So after a while, you really start to get to know your challengers and the coaches on your team. And there's always going to be conflict, whether they're not checking in or they're checking stink, or your coaches aren't listening to you, or they're having a tough week or whatever. So now that we have all of this knowledge of all of these colors, you can kind of guess who fits in where. Like before, sorry Jenny to use this again, but before Jenny even took the color code test, I could have told you she was a white. Before Marcy even took this, I knew she was a red. Before Tara even took this, I could have guessed that she was a blue. So a lot of times you can kind of figure it out just by knowing the people. So what does this have to do with Beachbody? So let's say you're in a challenge group and you have a red. So how do you deal with a red in your challenge group? Prepare yourself with facts and figures. Be direct, specific, and brief. So maybe say, instead of being like, oh, great breakfast, maybe be like, watch the sugar in your breakfast, maybe try eggs instead. But be careful with an authoritarian approach, because reds tend to, how do I say it, get defensive. When they do argue with you, don't take them personally. Don't embarrass them in front of others, and offer them leadership responsibilities. So if you have a red in your group that's quite obvious, maybe say to them, hey, I'm going to take Saturday off. Is there any way you can post something in the challenge group for me instead? Make them feel important. So if you're a coach and you have a red coach, like, so for example, Heidi and Marcy are my coaches and they're red. Offer them leadership opportunities. Be direct, specific, and brief. Don't take their arguments personally. They're acting out of logic. Silly thing, maybe they'll say something like, are you really going to blah, 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 blah? And me as a blue, I'll be like, well, what are you saying? You saying that's stupid? Should I not do that? Da, 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 da. No, they're just literally asking, are you going to X, Y, and Z? Because they're acting out of logic. And don't embarrass them publicly. So those are some suggestions for reds. Blues. So if you're in a challenge group and you have some blues, remember, blues are emotional. Be sincere. If they did a good job, tell them they did a really good job. Don't make them feel guilty. I remember being in challenge groups, and when I first started as a challenger under Mary, I'd have a really bad day and I'd post about it, and she'd say something like, oh, watch out for those Oreos, Kristen. I would be like, oh, I suck. I'm so bad at this. I should just quit. I would feel guilty. I would get down really quick, which is the next point. Don't expect them to bounce back quickly. And blues are not perfect people. They're very emotional. They're probably going to be like your emotional eaters, where like they get in an argument with their husband and they eat 14 cupcakes, and then like they're like, they'll need a lot of encouragement. So for you blue coaches, so this would be Tara. Who else was a blue? Jenna. Raise your hand if you were also a blue. I'm trying to think. Audra. Liz, what were you? Blue? Yeah? Okay. So don't demand immediate action. Allow them to collect their thoughts. I've noticed this, that made me think of Jenna, because sometimes I'll throw an idea at Jenna and she'll be like, well, let me think about it. Or I'll work on that this weekend. Blues are very creative. They like to make a lot of blues are artistic. And then be thorough and detailed in your praises. This was huge eye-opener for myself, that, I don't want to be told good job. I want to be told, like, you really spoke clearly on that call about X, Y, and Z. Or, what else could you be doing well? Your picture that you made for your clean eating group I like the colors. You know what I'm trying to say. Be specific, okay? All right, whites. In a challenge group, provide a non-threatening environment. So whites don't like to take charge, but they don't necessarily like to be told what to do all the time either. So non-threatening. Hear them out and listen carefully. Whites are really good listeners. But when they talk, they want to be listened to carefully, and they don't want to be rushed. So, hold on. If you have a white coach, share ideas with them. Don't demand them to be leaders until they're comfortable. Don't take away their daydreams. Be open and direct. Combine firmness with kindness. In other words, they need a little bit of a nudge sometimes, but don't rush them. All right. I need to hurry because we're almost out of time. Yellows. So yellows are your like life of the party. Jill Meter is a total yellow. She's happy, upbeat. She doesn't take life too seriously. She's a total yellow. So don't be too serious in your criticism. Don't expect perfection. Be upbeat and don't make them feel guilty. Recognize them publicly, the work value of their work, offer lots and lots and lots of praise and appreciation. Yellows are very creative in their people skills, but they're not going to be too serious. So a yellow coach probably won't set up a schedule for themselves. That would probably be more of like a red-blue kind of a thing. A yellow will probably be a really good coach because people really like yellows, but they probably won't have a power hour. So I don't know if Julie Pappas is a yellow or not, but I kind of feel like she would be a yellow. Like she's like the life of the party. She's very creative. People love her. She's very fun. So I would guess that she's a yellow. So, all right, I'm going to take you guys off mute and let's chat. What do you guys think about all of this? Do you think it's helpful?
Yes.
Yes?
It's helpful to know like who like my coaches are, and I think like the main ones for me that are running the business are all blues. So I know that when I can pair them up together, and it also helps me lead them and work with you, knowing that you are more of an emotional, not that I'm not emotional, I'm a very emotional person, but to know like to give them time to process and to just kind of understand them a little bit better. I mean, it helps me when I think about work and how I need to get along with my coworkers and stuff like that. So I think it's very helpful. So thank you.
Right, right. And I was thinking of Heidi too. You know, I feel like I tell Heidi a lot, like, give it time. Give it time. It'll happen. You know, and that's the red in her coming out. Like when you're dealing with other people, reds can make a decision based on logic like that. Like this is the clear answer, you know, and you know, I run into that with my husband. You know, we need a new car, and I gave a suggestion of something we could do, and he was like, nope, not going to work. And I was like, well, can you maybe think about it? You know, nope, not going to work. And, you know, that's just because he's a red. He didn't even need to think about it. In his mind, like that was the logic. Like, no, that's not going to work. Not even going to consider it. Whereas me as a blue, I'm a little bit more creative. So, Jenny, are you ironing? She's on mute. Anybody else? Tidbits, what did you think? Tara, is it helpful?
Oh, sorry, now I'm unmuted.
Oh, you're unmuted. Jenny, what did you think?
I thought it was really interesting. I haven't had my husband take the test, but I am like 100% sure he's a red. And I thought it was really strange because he's always trying to get me to make lists and make a schedule and be more organized and just, you know, help me get more organized because I'm terribly unorganized. And he always tells me, like, he leads a lot of people at work, and he tells me that I am like the most uncoachable person he's ever met. That like he can get all those people at work to, you know, train them and get them doing things, but he cannot get me to do anything. So I just thought that was really interesting to find out.
Yeah, and I would be really interested in, so I mean, I'm not saying anybody needs to spend the $40 to get the more in-depth thing, but I did spend the $40 and I got the more in-depth one, and I was a blue, but I only missed being a yellow by like 3 or 4 points. So I was pretty close, blue, yellow. And Jenny, I would be interested to see what your next one up would be.
I feel like maybe it would be blue, but I don't know. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, it was quite interesting because once you pay the $40, they send you videos and they send you stuff on working with other color codes and more in-depth analysis. And so I really enjoyed going through all of that and kind of seeing some more. Jenna came out as a blue, but I feel like if she took the more in-depth analysis, I can almost guarantee you there'd be a lot of red in there too. So yeah. But Tara, did you have anything to say?
No, I just thought it was really interesting. It actually kind of reminded me of, have you ever heard of the 5 love languages?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're like that. And my aunt always said, your touch. So that's like intimacy. So it kind of made sense.
Right. It also reminded me of the spiritual gifts test. Have you ever taken that? Yeah, it's kind of the same sort of thing. I was talking to my pastor on Sunday about this because he asked me to do some leadership training, which I think is really funny because I still don't view myself as a leader. And I told him that this would be a really good thing to start with. You know, have like the GEMS leaders all take the color code test to kind of see how to work well together, the children's ministries leaders or whatever. I just found it to be really interesting. But all right, if nobody else has any more questions, I'll go ahead and close out the call, and you guys can go back to the Hawks. Is it still on whatever it's called, intermission or whatever? Oh, so we really better go. All right. Well, message me if you have any questions, and I appreciate you hopping on. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.